Pittsburgh, and this is very important. You're on the frickin' clock. When the 2015-2016 NHL season begins, both Phil Kessel and Sidney Crosby will be 28 years old, and Evgeny Malkin will be 29. Marc-Andre Fleury will turn 31 less than 2 months into the season. And Chris Letang, oh, that little guy, just turned 28. Your time to win is now, and I certainly...
In October of 2016, the 44th President of the United States, Barack Obama, said one of his most powerful quotes in office. What was that quote, you ask? Was it something about immigration, healthcare? No, it was this.
We are here to celebrate an extraordinary achievement. Phil Kessel is a Stanley Cup champion. Hey!
Phil Kessel, a two-time Stanley Cup champion with the Pittsburgh Penguins, one of the best players in the NHL over the past decade, and of course, one of my favorite players to ever play the game of hockey. Kessel is not on the Penguins anymore, as he was traded to the Arizona Coyotes in a trade that we will not discuss. But his time in Pittsburgh, his 4 years in Pittsburgh, is certainly not an era wasted like some claim his time in Toronto was. In 4 seasons with the Penguins, Kessel totaled 393 games played in both the playoffs and regular season, was a 2-time Stanley Cup champion, a monster on the power play, and had 359 points. He was honestly snubbed for the Conn Smythe in both 2016 and 2017, as that award went to Sidney Crosby instead. On top of it all, Phil Kessel missed this many games. Kessel totaled 10 goals, 12 assists, and 22 points in the 2016 playoffs, and he was on the third line, playing with Nick Bonino and Carl Hagelin as a part of the HBK line. And in 2016-2017, where he won back-to-back Stanley Cups, he had 8 goals and 15 assists and 23 points in 25 games. Oh, and that's great and all, but what about Kessel makes him so special? A bunch of other players have scored 30 goals and had good playoff performances. Well, I'll tell you, personality. Before Kessel came to Pittsburgh, he played in 2 of the most passionate hockey cities in the entire world, Toronto and Boston. The media would constantly bombard Kessel with questions that one could say were unethical. A key example of this was in 2015 when the Leafs fired their head coach Randy Carlyle. Phil Kessel was then asked, "There have been accusations that you're a difficult guy to coach. Is there any truth to that?" Which is essentially the same thing as me asking a fast food employee, "There have been accusations that you suck at making burgers. Is there any truth to that?" Kessel, of course, appropriately responded by saying,
"Thanks, Phil."
This guy's such an idiot here.
Kessel was often criticized for his lack of effort towards the Toronto Maple Leafs, who, at the time, were one of the worst teams in the National Hockey League. And this is before they were losing to 42-year-old Zamboni drivers. Also in 2015, infamous Toronto Sun reporter Steve Simmons wrote one of the weirdest sports columns ever, as he stated he knew people that saw Phil Kessel go to a Toronto hot dog vendor every afternoon, and how that was a result of his lack of determination and work ethic towards the Maple Leafs. Of course, this was not a true story at all, but Kessel got back at him in 2017 when he posted this picture. The things that happened to Kessel in Toronto were the result of a player who did not like the media spotlight, as well as the media kind of being scummy towards Kessel. So when he was deemed uncoachable and that he was never going to win a thing in the entire league, on free agency day on July 1st, 2015, Phil Kessel was traded to the Pittsburgh Penguins. Coming to Pittsburgh was a perfect fit for Kessel, as he was not the best player. He didn't have the pressure to be the guy anymore. He wasn't even the second best player. Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin existed. Kessel was able to produce at a more reduced role out of the spotlight. And when the Penguins were winning back-to-back Stanley Cups, they didn't have a 1-2 punch. They had a 1-2-3 punch with Crosby, Malkin, and Kessel. In 2016, he didn't even play with Malkin or Crosby. He played with Nick Bonino and Carl Hagelin and formed one of the most dominant playoff lines, dare I say it, in NHL history, the HBK line. So while you have Crosby, Gensel, Sherry on the first line, Malkin on the second, Kessel on the third, and a Matt Cullen as your fourth line center. That's a championship roster, and Penguins were at the top 2 years in a row. So while Kessel's time in Pittsburgh ended off a little shaky, his legacy will always be in our hearts. A part of me is actually kind of happy that Kessel's no longer on the roster. He was only in Pittsburgh for 4 years, so technically the Penguins won the Stanley Cup. Not even technically. Statistically, the Penguins won the Stanley Cup 50% of the time Kessel was in Pittsburgh. So before we wrap this up, let's look at two trades. One being one of the greatest trades in Penguins history, the acquisition of Phil Kessel in 2015, and the other being the departure of Phil Kessel in 2019. And since we've already talked about Kessel, let's look at the other pieces in this deal and have a retrospective on where they are now. To Toronto, Nick Spaulding.
Only there for cap space.
Kasperi Kapanen. Scott Harrington.
Bust.
A 2016 first-round pick was traded to the Anaheim Ducks in exchange for Frederik Andersen. Anaheim then used that pick to select Sam Steele, who was a good young forward for them. A 2016 third-round pick turned into James Greenway, still in the Leaf system. And to Pittsburgh, Tyler Biggs.
Bust.
Tim Eriksson.
Bust.
A 2016 second-round pick turned into Kasper Bjornquist, still in the Penguin system, and of course Phil Kessel. I see many Leafs fans say that this is a win for both sides. I mean, the Leafs did get Kasperi Kapanen and eventually Frederik Andersen out of this Kessel trade, but the Penguins won the Stanley Cup twice. Isn't that why you trade things to reach the ultimate goal of the Stanley Cup? Another thing that kind of gets overlooked in this deal is that the Leafs retained salary. Kessel was making $8 million and was only making $6.8 towards the cap when he played in Pittsburgh. The Leafs paid Phil Kessel $1.2 million to win 2 Stanley Cups. A team that is infamous for their cap issues, and they're still paying him for the next 2 years. I get that the Leafs got Andersen and Kapanen out of this deal, but Kapanen's back in Pittsburgh now, and Kessel won 2 Stanley Cups in Pittsburgh. This trade, to me, is up there with the Ron Francis trade in Penguins history as one of the greatest trades of all time. And I'm not sure who our current general manager is because it's not Jim Rutherford. Jim Rutherford did this. It's not the same man that signed Jack Johnson. June 29th, 2019, the Penguins traded away Phil Kessel after some drama around the team and the need to free up some cap space to sign Brandon Tanev, which actually kind of worked out pretty good. So to the Arizona Coyotes was Phil Kessel, Dane Burks, AHL defenseman, and a 2021 fourth-round pick. It's the year 2020 when I'm recording this video, so we don't know who this pick is going to be yet. To Pittsburgh, Alex Galchenyuk and Pierre-Olivier Joseph. Alex Galchenyuk is no longer with the Penguins. He was traded in the Zucker deal and was horrendous in his time in Pittsburgh, to say the least. He scored less than 10 goals, was injured very often, and did not contribute like the Penguins would have wished he had. In his first year in Arizona, Phil Kessel did struggle. He scored 14 goals in 70 games, but he still has not missed a game since 2009, which is absolutely absurd. Kessel and the Coyotes did advance to the Stanley Cup playoffs as they beat the Nashville Predators in the qualifying round and made the playoffs for the first time since 2012. Now, as I mentioned before, I have little faith left in what Jim Rutherford is doing now, but the one area that he is still pretty good at is finding random project defensemen, if you will, and turning them into a top 4 D-men. It was Marcus Pettersson 2 years ago they found from Anaheim when he traded Daniel Sprong. It was John Marino last year, who was phenomenal. I hope it's going to be Pierre-Olivier Joseph this year, who was the Arizona Coyotes' first-round pick in 2017. A young defenseman who, according to many people inside the Penguins organization, is ready to take that next step. Let's cross our fingers and hope he can kick out Jack Johnson in the top 6. Kessel will likely never play a game for the Pittsburgh Penguins ever again, and it's sad to say that, but the era he had in Pittsburgh was certainly not wasted. There are a lot of folk heroes here in Pittsburgh for what they've done in the playoffs. Max Talbot is one that comes off the top of my mind when I think of big playoff performers that came within the Penguins organization. Phil Kessel is going to be one of those names, and I think he should be a Penguins Hall of Famer, maybe even a Hockey Hall of Famer one day. Kessel, we love you. We miss you in Pittsburgh, and thank you for the 2 cups. Thank you all for watching and tuning into this video. If you haven't already noticed, this is kind of a parody of Steve Dangle's video from 2015, Phil Kessel and Era Wasted. I'm a huge fan of Steve's. I'll link his channel and his Twitter account in the description below. Shout out the Steve Dangle podcast as well. I listen to them all the time. Thank you all for watching. Do not subscribe. If you do, your phone will self-destruct. If you don't like my opinions, well, too bad. They're my own opinions, and we'll see you next time.